John Zannis alongside Greg Bedard reporting for CLNS Media at the Mike Vrabel Introductory press conference. Vrabel was introduced to a throng of reporters today in a place I didn't know existed until a moment ago, the SI something or other. But it was a big to-do, and Vrabel, as we kind of expected he would, really hit all the right notes. And the number one thing that stood out to me, Greg, was and I know this is mainly superficial stuff, but it's extremely important for a head coach to be able to kind of handle these situations. How on point he was with almost everything that he said, the kind of command presence, and also the art of talking to somebody, saying something without actually revealing very much, and he was a master at doing that. And I really thought, again, he commanded the room on day one. Can you just talk about that as it stands in contrast to what we had before that?
Yeah, I mean, I think my number one takeaway is Mike Vrabel, you're getting a guy who knows exactly what the job is, what it entails, what he has to do, and has, steadfast beliefs on how to do that. I mean, he talked about that everyone, and he meant everyone from the coaches to the players, everyone had to earn the right to be there every single day, and about how there would be, no entitlement for anybody. And he just, I'm sure we're going to do this a few times. I'm sure I'm going to write this for BSJ, but just contrasting it to Gerard Mayo's press conference last year. I mean, it was night and day compared to, last year was extremely light on vision, on football. This was extremely heavy on vision, on football. He basically could talk on any subject, how it comes to a football team, and has his beliefs. And he just, as a Patriots fan, I'm sure a lot of people sat out there and listened to him, and they were just like, all right, thank God. We got a guy who knows what he's doing, who knows what the job is about, and has a vision for what he's going to do. I mean, like you said, some of the answers were a little bit light, and there are a lot of unanswered questions going forward as far as the structure and the coaching staff and things like that. But it's obvious that Mike Vrabel has done this job before. He knows where he's going, and he knows what he needs to do to get the team there. Yeah,
and Greg mentioned it. We're going to quickly play that soundbite where Vrabel did talk about kind of what it takes to play here in Foxboro.
We're going to earn the right to be here every day. We're going to remove entitlement from our football team. We're going to get everything that we've earned from the head coach to the position coaches all the way down to the players. And we're going to earn the right to be here every single day.
So that, to me, Greg, is what kind of jumps there. That was the bite that really popped for me about entitlement. There's not going to be any here. And that's what was so interesting, because Mayo was supposed to be so much about setting the culture right. And the culture really became mainly like, I'm going to be nice to these guys, and the guy before was mean. And really, that's not what it is. The culture is kind of establishing, like, here's how we're going to do this, and if you do things the way I want you to do them, things are going to be great for you. But if you don't, it's not going to go well. And I think that that's very clear with a guy like Vrabel, is it's not going to be, guys riding around with bikes in the locker room and blah, 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 and this and that. Like, that stuff surfaced extremely early with Mayo, where you're seeing people starting to pop off and complain about their roles and this and that. Yep. I just don't think you're going to get any.
Well, it wasn't only that. When I heard the entitlement comment, the first thing that jumped to me was the coaching staff, because I think, a lot of what we've heard and what I've heard from behind the scenes is there's been a lot of whining and complaining about what they didn't have, they expected to have 3 years. There's no way Mike Vrabel's coming in with that attitude. He knows, like, this is a year-to-year proposition, and if he doesn't do his job, he's going to be out too. And and I loved how he talked, and these are things that I've talked about for a while. Is when in regards to this team, is like, look, it doesn't matter what you have or what you don't have. All right, your job as a coach is to make the best of what you have, and that's what we heard from him time and time again, that they are going to, whatever they have, they are going to make the best of it. And that's talking to Bill O'Brien last night. I wrote this for BSJ. He says that Mike's an expert at taking what he has on hand and maximizing it. And I think that's a great place to start. Like he talked about, like, the first thing they're going to try to do is be good enough to win against
bad football.
Yeah. And that's something that this team could not do last year. And that's something that I expect for them to do. If they would have done that last year, who knows? They would have won 6-7 games, and Mayo might be here. But, this all goes back to Mike's done this job. He's been around. He's experienced. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and he did say, we're going to do what we can do. He's not going to ask his guys to do things that is kind of outside or beyond their scope of abilities.
Which was a huge problem with this offense.
Which makes sense.
This year.
You can't do what you can't do, so you have to walk before you can run, and recognizing this is a rebuild sort of situation again with a 4-win team. You can really only do what the personnel will allow.
Yeah, I mean, without question. And I don't even think Mike views this as a rebuild. He's, they're going to try to get
what we got.
Yeah, and we're going to try to get good as soon as we can. And I think guys like, you talk about entitlement, maybe guys like Jalen Polk, Demario Douglas, maybe Keon White, who they had issues with.
Yeah.
Those guys thought they were, entitled to certain things, or it should be easy. Not only is Mike going to make things difficult, but those guys are going to understand where they are. And Mike's also really good about coaching players up. Like, when he was in Cleveland this year, he had a great relationship with this tackle, DeJuan Jones, who was a guy I wanted the Patriots to draft a few years ago. Really worked with him on a one-on-one basis to get him better, and he'll do that. He has that ability, especially if he fills in an experienced coaching staff that can handle things, and he can sort of pop in and really help guys. He's going to reach them on a personal level, but then he's also going to understand, how do I get this player to play better for me? Yeah. And that's what he'll be trying to do every single day.
Yeah, you mentioned offensive line again, and also being light on some details. Obviously, nobody's going to come out here and say, we're going to do exactly this. But when it came to personnel, the Patriots have a lot of resources with a number 4 overall pick, a couple of day 2 picks as well, was it 2 third-rounders and a second-rounder. Plus they've got a ton of cap space, and everybody knows. And he didn't go, we're going to open the checkbook or whatever it was that Mayo said. But the one thing he did talk about in terms of specifics of what they want to address was, we've got to protect the quarterback.
Yep.
And he also did talk about Drake May and elevating Drake May and putting him in a position to succeed and getting pieces around him. So while it's not going to go as far as to say we're really only drafting offensive players around this guy, there's going to clearly be an emphasis on, we got to do better around this guy and this kid, or else we have no chance of moving forward.
Yeah, he said, they're going to make that a priority, but also being sound up front and doing things that, not dabbling in things. And he talked about whether it's zone or gap scheme, and they are going to do exactly what the players have the ability to do. They'll figure that out. He talked about the being sound on the interior. As well, which, but I thought he had a bunch of interesting things to say about the offense, that they wanted to be aggressive, not reckless, up front, strong and sound. So they are definitely going to have an identity, and it's going to be formed by what the players can do. That was too many times. That was a problem this year with the offense and the defense, where they were trying to do things that sounded good in theory. But you have to start with, can we execute this stuff? Can these guys do it? Mike made that a point multiple times today, that if they can't do it, there's no point in us doing it.
Right. And the rest of the structure we don't know, right?
Yeah.
So we're still in the dark, but I expect the interview process is going to start with the coordinators. And again, you've got this question about the power structure and who's going to be making the final decision. On the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast we did right after the news dropped that Vrabel was hired, you did kind of assume, or you said kind of outright, I think it's going to be his final call. Like, he stopped short a couple of times here of saying exactly what the roles of Elliott Wolf or Matt Groh or Highsmith will be, and they were present here for this press conference, and he did not confirm whether or not he's bringing in his friend Ryan Cowden, right? To help with the personnel. But it kind of sounds like this is the direction that we're going here. He did say, hey, we're just going to all talk about it, and I trust this process, and I think everything will work out. Again, I don't think everything just works out. I do think that there is going to be some kind of structure coming at some point. So you still feel what you were saying yesterday, that he's going to bring in his guys, and he's probably going to be the guy who's making the final calls here.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hear anything that today that sort of pushes me off. That I think that Mike's going to have the ultimate call on pretty much everything that goes on in this organization. I do have the feeling that the Crafts were pushing for Vrabel to keep the front office intact, at least most of it. That doesn't preclude him from bringing on a person or two and basically seeing how it works for the next year. And if Mike doesn't think it's working, like say after this year's draft, then they'll make changes sooner rather than later. But I did think, it was a little light on structure. Like we do not know exactly how things are going to work. I found it interesting that he mentioned Elliott Wolf multiple times during this, and that they have been meeting
and they've talked
this weekend. And I will say that Elliott has the reputation for being able to work well with just about anybody and making things work, and he will do things in the vision of the head coach and exactly what he wants. And I think in Mike Vrabel, we're getting a head coach that probably, similar to Bill, has exactly what he would like in terms of player profiles and that type of thing.
Yeah, and my last takeaway, I think it is interesting how there was such a push last year, particularly with the Mayo hire, to emphasize how things were going to be different and the culture and this and that, and almost just really fixated on not being Bill. And it is interesting that there's a lot of what Vrabel brings to the table that is a little Bill-like in his approach in terms of structure and discipline and being demanding of guys. I'm sure a lot of people have seen that viral clip from Tyler Lewin, who used to play with him, who said he's going to call you out in the meeting, he's going to stand you up, he's going to say, what are you doing there, what are you doing there, and if you don't know, you're going to sit your butt back down and feel shame. That's kind of the guy who's and he can be kind of an a-hole at times, and that's been a reputation. It's an interesting pivot back to that after saying that was the thing that they desperately wanted to avoid.
Yeah, but I would also say it's similar in that way, but it's also different. Like, and we heard Mike talk about it.
He's a different guy, completely different, and he gives back once you do what he wants.
Bill was more of like, this is the way we do things, and you're just going to do it. Do your job.
Yeah.
Like, that's just shut up and do your job.
Right.
Mike is more, that's part of it, but he also, and we heard him talk about this, he believes, because of his background as a player, that you need to know the people around you, like to really get accountability and really get buy-in as a team. Like, you need to know each other on a personal level, not just like walking by like, hey, what's up? Like, no, you need to know what's going on with people in your position group, and like that's when you really get true buy-in. And I do think that's a big difference between Vrabel and Belichick, and it leaves open the potential that the Patriots could even reach greater heights, because not only are they going to have football buy-in, but they might have some emotional buy-in as well.
Yeah. So that's it for wrapping up the press conference and the takeaways. You can read more about it over on Boston Sports Journal. If you haven't subscribed already, you should. It's $50 a year for the best sports coverage in town, but terrific football coverage as well. And it's going to be obviously an extremely interesting offseason for the Patriots. It's really just beginning now with the Mike Vrabel hire. If you like this video, please hit that like button. Also subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel. For Greg Bedard, I'm John Zannis. We'll see you.